Okay, now it's time to go about the brown base coat for most of this structure. Now we're going to use a brown base coat for most of what's left. We're going to use it for all the wooden timber parts and the door. We're going to use it for the masonry upper half of the house. Now that will have a tan color in the end, but we're going to start with a brown base coat for a couple of reasons we'll talk about. And we're actually going to do the metal roof in a dark brown as well, because this is going to be a very rusted roof to give it a nice effect at the end. So believe it or not, a dark brown base coat is going to work really well for us. We'll make it metallic looking later on. That'll take care of itself. But for now we're going to do the wood, the masonry, and the roof in a dark brown base coat. And just like before, to create a darker gray, we're going to create a darker brown with a basic brown paint. This is a medium brown or a nutmeg brown. Let me shake that up a little bit. And we're going to mix that in one of our Warmachine palettes, you might say, need a fair amount, with some black so we can get a dark brown. Yeah, again, you could buy a dark brown. I like this idea because you can really make sure that you get the color you're looking for by mixing it yourself. Notice it's about 3 parts brown to 1 part black. That should give us the mixture that I'm looking for. Let me take a look at it. It's amazing how a little black quickly darkens your brown, so you got to keep that in mind. I'm liking this brown. I may need to add some more paint later. That's fine, but this brown should work pretty well for our purposes. Alright, so that 3-to-1 ratio should be about right. I'm going to start applying this to the broader areas of the house where the blue foam is. Now the reason I wanted even though I'm going to end up tan here, I wanted a dark base coat for a couple reasons. This dark brown. One is I want these crevices that we carved in where there's crack in the masonry to really pop later, and we've got to make them dark to contrast with the tan. The other reason is this blue, and the same thing goes for the pink styrofoam, really shows through any thin or light colored paint. So we want to make sure we get a nice thick coat of a dark paint on there. So I'm going to start painting that on. Now it's okay if I go over this wood because we're going to make sure we get all that later, but for now I'm just going to concentrate on the blue areas. It's okay to get on the roof too because we're going to do all that. I'm going to go right over this beam since this is all going to be base coated the same color. Alright, and I am going to continue base coating. Okay, and I'm even going to get the window frame now. I'm going to get a finer brush in there in a second. You'll see me do when I do the speed part of the video. But now I'm just covering some broad areas with this broad brush. Alright, and don't worry if you're getting brown in the window. That's going to be black. That's the very last one of the very last steps we're going to do. But that's the easiest thing to do last. So we really just want to make sure we get the wood. It's okay if we get brown in there in the meantime. Right, so I want to remind you, dark brown base coat for the masonry upper half of the building and the ceiling tiles and any woodwork and the door. Alright, and then you're going to see me speed paint that now, and then we'll go back and talk about the next step in just a second. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me speed paint the rest of this. This is a big job. But I will mention a couple things are going to happen for me to finish off this brown. One is I'm going to do the roof, of course. I'm also going to go in and I'm going to paint this metal rim around the chimney that we added because that's going to be a rusty metal later on too. I'm going to do all the wooden parts, and when I do the wooden parts I'm going to get in there with my smaller detail brush, alright, to make sure that I don't paint on the brick. It's very important that that brick area is done, so we don't want to mess that up and have to redo that. So you want to be very careful and not get on the brick. That's the tricky part. Alright, so I'll finish that off and then we'll move on to the next part of the video. Okay, now you can see the brickwork is completely done on this house. Okay, all the way around the bottom. Okay, and of course the chimney is also done as well. We've base coated all the top of this dark brown, all the wood, all the masonry, and even the metal shingles, which will look right in the end. What we're going to do now is we're going to do our masonry color, which is going to be kind of a tan. So that's going to be on the upper half of the house. What you're going to find with this is it's kind of a little bit tricky because you're going to apply this tan, but what we don't want to do is get any of that tan paint inside those crevices that we etched in earlier, the crack in the masonry. So we're going to get, I wouldn't say really a dry brush, but we're going to get a little bit of paint off there, and we're going to start to lightly go across our house in that upper area as such. Now what I like to do, you'll see that that crevice is still showing up. So what I want to make sure I do is get enough paint on there to give me a nice coating, but not so much that I obscure those cracks. I'm also going to leave a little bit of brown next to the wooden timber framing. It'll make for a nice effect later. Okay, so I'm going to continue to get in there and get the upper half of this house that tan color, but again I'm going to leave a little bit of gap next to the timber. It'll look nice. Up here I can get real close to the shingling. I want to make sure I get a nice coat there on the edge. You might find if this goes on a little light over the dark brown base coat that we did, or undercoating that we did, you might have to get in there and go in with a second coat. As long as, remember, you don't go over those cracks in the masonry. That's the real trick. So again, you have enough paint on here so that we get a nice coating, but we want those cracks to continue to show up in the masonry, otherwise that was more or less all for nothing. I want to leave a little gap next to the planks or timbers here. Alright, and here comes another crack. You don't want to lose that definition. Okay. I'm basically going to get up there close to the shingles and along the edge here. Alright, so this is what this is going to begin to look like. If it's a little light, we'll go in with a second coat. I'm going to continue to do the upper half of this building where the masonry is. I'm not going to make you watch it all, but I'll show you the finished product in just a second.